Hey folks, recently I realised that maybe I do too many videos on Breath of the Wild 2. It's not forced or anything, I actually really love talking about the game, but I understand as viewers that this may get a bit saturated. So I set out on a mission a few weeks ago to come up with as many non-sequel related ideas as possible, some old and untouched ideas that I've revived, and some brand new ones. Today, we'll be looking at something new that I've never even noticed, and it's found in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Fairly early on in Ocarina of Time, the young hero-to-be Link sneaks into Hyrule Castle via the courtyards to meet Princess Zelda, but if we look closely in the courtyards, we can see two very interesting figures. We can see two statues, just round the corner from each other as we approach Zelda's little garden. But who are these people? One depicts a sort of wise figure, the other a warrior of sorts with two others by their side. But who exactly are these people? There are no signs to read that can tell us, no mention of them anywhere in the game, and not much to go off. At least not at face value. Trust me, there is more to this which we'll be getting to very soon. But the thing that baffles me the most about this mystery is that as far as I can see, nobody's discussed this on YouTube. I mean, I searched and searched, but found nothing. The only discussions I found were a few discussions on online forums, which will be referenced later. But for now, let's get into it. Who on earth are these figures? Be sure to go and grab yourself a snack or drink and send them in to get featured right here. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, it really helps the channel out. And let's get into this one. We'll begin by looking at the statue I've dubbed as the Wise Figure statue. Based on appearance, which is of course subjective, I see the robes they are wearing as an indication to who they wear. It gives me advisor vibes, perhaps somebody very close to the royal family who helped make or give input for big decisions. At first glance, they strike me as a Zora, but the more I look, the more Hylian they appear. And it just makes sense, they're in Hyrule Castle. And to be honest, I think that was just me looking at this at like 3 AM and seeing Zora. But when I saw this more awake and not half asleep, it's Hylian. Now, something very important to consider regarding both statues is that they are within the Hyrule Castle grounds, in a space that isn't open for public viewing. This could mean that whoever these people were highly important to the royal family, given how close they are to the royal family and their own personal living space. We see a little symbol at the bottom of this statue, but it doesn't really resemble much. I checked all the known symbols in game, and it doesn't really match any. So I further searched within other games and still struggled to find a match. Maybe it's an old lost symbol regarding their role, but let's be honest, this is a big castle, it's probably just to look fancy. There's honestly a lot less to go off for this figure, and I'm kind of stuck at them probably just being some sort of wise advisor of sorts within the castle, one that played a big role in something which we'll actually get to later. Some also suggest that this could be a younger Rauru, the Sage of Light, which could actually make a lot of sense given the high status of the Sage. I mean, he is very wise, he wears robes, and is a known person to the royal family of high importance. Personally, I can agree here, but we'll come to more of a solid conclusion later in the video. For now, let's walk around the corner and take a look at the other statue. This is of course the more intriguing statue, at least to me. Not because it's a big bulky warrior, no. Okay, maybe a little, but more so because there's a lot more to go off of and discuss. At face value, we see a large warrior dressed in a sort of Roman-styled looking set of armour, far from the style of Highline soldiers. Maybe this is ceremonial? They wield a blade in their left hand, very similar to a certain hero, more often than not, but it's clearly not depicting the Master Sword, rather some other blade. But that doesn't mean this person isn't significant. I mean, they've got a literal statue in Hyrule Castle. Now this one does have a recognisable symbol, the Triforce, which could leave you to believe that it's a former hero, but at the same time, the Triforce is also a known relic to the royal family, and we see it all over the game. We also see two smaller figures on each side of the warrior. Who are they? Who knows? Now, I should mention that these statues are also seen in the original Nintendo 64 version, but are just blurry versions of the updated Nintendo 3DS models. The only real difference is that the warrior has a few more smaller figures by their side, but I don't think that really changes much, and you'll find out why I think that later in the video. Given the location of this statue and the look of the figure, some guesses that come to mind are a king or hero, obviously both in the past. But if we look at all versions of the King of Hyrule, none of them really appear to match this build. The king has always been a big rounded figure, a mighty man, with a beard too. This likely isn't a former king, unless it was a king in his prime, but personally I feel that's digging a little too deep. Next, I'd looked at Hero. Now whether this is the hero, Link, well, a past one, or just a knowing hero, not Link, we don't know yet. The sword is a big giveaway to confirm that it isn't a Link seen with the Blade of Evil's Bane. At this point in the timeline though, there wouldn't have been many heroes wielding the mighty Master Sword. In fact, there would only have been one, the very first hero. In Four Swords, the Master Sword doesn't appear, and in the Minish Cap, the hero wielded the Picori Blade. Now it is also known as the Sacred Sword and Sacred Blade, but it is classed as a different sword. Anyway, that doesn't affect things too much, I just wanted to get that established. This was also wielded by the Hero of Men, the Picori Blade. A hero we haven't seen in a game, only scenes during the Minish Cap. In this shot of said Hero of Men, we see the blade they wielded. Now it doesn't necessarily look the same as this one, but I guess it's closer than the Master Sword in terms of the hilt. It's hard to say. Another thing to consider is the hair. Now there has been a little bit of debate online as to whether or not this is a helmet or long hair. Personally, I think it's long hair, going off the way it flows more down to the back, and if it was a hood, surely it would attach from the shoulders? So yeah, I think it's their hair personally. Given the attire of this character, a Roman-esque fancy armour compared to the standard knight armour, it is clear that this wasn't just your average warrior. They were likely some sort of leader or driving force in battle. They have two biblical-like figures beside them. Biblical is the only term that comes to mind here, solely based on their poses. But what does this all mean? A warrior with two people next to him sort of reaching out. Well, if we look at the history prior to the events of the game, we can maybe find some answers. If you weren't already aware, shortly before the events of Ocarina of Time, there was a civil war, a long-lasting one. I'll leave links below to a more in-depth insight to the Hyrulean Civil War, but for this video, all we need to know is that there was one not long before the events of Ocarina of Time. Now, given that things ended well following the war, Hyrule became unified and peace was settled. Could this figure have been somebody crucial during the war? Something interesting to note here is that as far as we know, there was no hero present within the war. The Hero of Time was born during the war and grew up in the safe haven of Kokiri Woods whilst the war came to an end. We even see this in a cutscene of the game after the Forest Temple. The previous hero wasn't around as far as I know, and given that this figure is located within such a private area, only open to the royal family and naturally their guards, I think that this could be a key figure from the war, perhaps a leader of the Hylian army. But there are still two key things to figure out here. The two smaller figures and the Triforce. Well, my interpretation based on what I've already suggested is that these two figures on the side could represent those that were saved and or sought safety during the war. Sought after safety? I don't know English. They are almost reaching out, possibly reaching out for hope, reaching out for a savior. That's how I see it. As for the other key thing to figure out, the Triforce symbol on the base of the statue. I see this simply as a symbol of unification. We know that the conclusion of the Hyrulean Civil War was unification, and the Triforce in a sense does represent this quality. We also see these two pieces next to the relic. This could be another version or take on the crest of Hyrule, which depicts the wings of a loft wing around the Triforce. Perhaps this is a fancier, stylized version made to fit of the crest. We see it in Zelda's courtyard as well. Basically, what I was trying to say is that the power, courage, and wisdom together of the Triforce all represent unification. We see the symbol all across Hyrule as well, on posters, buildings, and of course, the statue. It appears to be used as a symbol kingdom-wide, unifying Hyrule. To try and come to some sort of conclusion, the first statue we talked about is definitely a bit more tricky to actually answer. I really like the idea of this being a young Rauru, who helped to advise the royal family through the Civil War. This idea did stem from one of the discussions I read online and will be linked below. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I highly recommend checking it out. My general thoughts on that is that it would just make a lot of sense and really add up with how private these statues are. I mean, Rauru's literally a sage. He's a wise one as well. It would make sense for him to be an advisor during the war, and following it, get his own statue. As for the warrior and co, I personally believe that this is depicting a key figure from the Hyrulean Civil War. Not somebody we know by name, that is the knowledge of the royal family. It's definitely not a past hero for me. I'd love for it to be a past hero, but there just really isn't enough to actually prove that. So that's why I'm going with a key figure of the war. Perhaps they were the leader or first in command of the army itself, a crucial figure in the war that ended with the unification of Hyrule. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Write in your thoughts in the comments right now and get discussing. I look forward to reading and replying to them. Thanks a ton for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing for more fabulous Zelda content. If you haven't already, be sure to hop in our Discord server through the link below. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram to keep up to date, and as always, a huge special thank you goes out to all of my supporters across Patreon and YouTube. If you'd like to join them and get yourself a shout out upon joining and your name at the end of every video, then consider supporting. Again, thanks for watching, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.